They call it the ultimate team sport. 12 players per side, each player a specialist in a single position. But there's one player in particular, one player that touches the ball on almost every single play and who is absolutely critical to a team's success or failure. That player, of course, the quarterback. That's who we're going to be discussing today, and specifically 2025's most outstanding player, Nathan Rourke. He played most of his college ball in Ohio, where he would start for 3 years, winning 3 consecutive bowls, alongside a teammate whose name you may recognize, future superstar running back A.J. Ouellette. After college, he would have a pro scouting report that wasn't particularly complimentary. Listed as a little bit over 6'1" with supposedly very poor agility, and a weakness section that reads, doesn't take what defenses give him often enough as a passer, arm strength, doesn't threaten tight windows, lacks ball placement and touch on throws downfield, doesn't have NFL accuracy on challenging throws, tougher than he is explosive, and finally, unlikely to outpace NFL linebackers as an outside runner. Clearly, scouting is more of an art than a science. Despite a negative pro scouting report, he'd be drafted 15th overall by the BC Lions in 2020. However, because the next season was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic, he wouldn't actually lace up for his first pro game until 2021. Aside from just 2 games that year, he would spend most of the season holding the clipboard for veteran passer Mike O'Reilly. However, prior to the 2022 season, Mike O'Reilly, the league leading passer the season prior, would somewhat unexpectedly announce his retirement. This would then push young Nathan Rourke squarely into the spotlight, as the BC Lions would quickly announce him as their new franchise quarterback. What he would accomplish the next season is truly astounding. For those unfamiliar, it's very rare for a quarterback to be handed the keys in just their second year. The game's too fast, too complex for them to learn in just 1 year. At least that's what GMs thought. Here's a graph showing all the top passers from 2025 and how many yards they produced in their second year in the league. As you can see, even some future superstars in the league would have minimal opportunity in year 2 of their careers, with a couple of notable exceptions. When you compare that against Rourke's production in his second year, well, the numbers speak for themselves. The average second year production of all 9 of these top passers was a little bit over 1,000 yards. Rourke passed for over 3 times the average. What's even more incredible about that is he did so in only 10 games. It's hard to put into perspective just how good Rourke's 2022 season was. But before we get into that, we need to discuss something called quarterback efficiency. Now, the exact calculation doesn't really matter, but what you do need to know is that it factors in completion percentage, yards per attempt, touchdowns per attempt, and interceptions per attempt to give a quarterback a rating from 0 being the worst up to 158.3 being a nearly perfect performance. Let's just call it 158. To give you an idea of just how hard it is to achieve a quarterback efficiency of 158, I was able to find exactly 2 games in the past 5 seasons where somebody has accomplished this. That equates to 0.13% of games played, even accounting for the canceled season. To put that into perspective, a no-hitter in baseball, considered one of the rarest accomplishments in professional sports, is done about 0.13% of the time. One of the 2 games where this was accomplished, Hamilton quarterback and future Hall of Famer Bo Levi Mitchell last season against the Toronto Argonauts passed for 332 yards, no interceptions, and 5 touchdowns. The other to do it, second-year quarterback Nathan Rourke in 2022. We'll get to that game later. But by the end of the 2022 season, Rourke would have an incredible league-leading efficiency rating of 122.6. By the way, That's the second highest quarterback efficiency in history in his first year as a starter and second year as a pro. Rourke would start the season off by scorching Edmonton, Toronto, and Ottawa for a combined total of 1,077 yards, 9 touchdown passes to just 2 interceptions to win his first 3 games as a starter. Rourke would continue with another strong performance in Week 4 against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the runaway best team in the league that year. However, they would come up short, and he would register his first loss as a starting quarterback. Rourke would then continue with 2 more strong performances against Hamilton and Saskatchewan and come away with 2 more wins before his pièce de résistance against the Edmonton Elks on August 6, 2022. Here's what an efficiency rating of 158 looks like. It would actually be a slow start to the game for Rourke. His offensive line would get outplayed early to allow Edmonton to stuff the run, and then on the resulting 2nd and long, they get home for a sack, forcing an early 2-0. After Duron Carter badly mishandles the resulting punt, BC would get the ball back, but the results would be similar to the first drive. Edmonton would send a safety blitz that then forces James Butler inside, where he's met by another collapsing offensive line. Edmonton then manages to get pressure with only a 3-man rush, forcing a check down throw to Butler and another 2-0. That would be the last time Edmonton's defense would find much success. When they would next receive possession, Rourke conducts a great drive, hitting every throw and finishing with a perfectly placed corner toss to Dominic Rhymes. Edmonton would strike back with a touchdown of their own, giving Rourke the ball back with 2.5 minutes to go in the first quarter. Here, we get a great example of how Rourke lacks ball placement and touch on throws downfield, as he puts flawless touch on this perfectly placed ball downfield to Lucky Whitehead to start the drive. He then follows it up when his very poor agility shakes Toby Antigua out of his shoes for a huge gain. After a short crosser is stopped short of the goal line, Rourke would once again finish the drive with a perfect touch pass to Dominic Rhymes. On BC's 5th drive, we then get a good example of how Rourke's arm strength doesn't threaten tight windows when he chucks a heater into a porthole. After a few more completions and a run from Butler, Rourke would finish the drive with yet another touch pass to Dominic Rhymes. BC would then get the ball back with 6 minutes left in the half, but Rourke wouldn't need all of it. Chris Jones sends what I like to call the Don Matthews special, rushing 8 at the line, disguising nothing. Rourke sees his blitz in time and gets the ball out just as he's being hit. This turns into a bit of playground nonsense as Whitehead doesn't have a defender in the same time zone, and he walks in for 6. BC would punt on their next drive before getting the ball back with 70 seconds left in the half. Rourke would only need 64 of them to drive down the field and pitch a perfect back shoulder throw to Brian Burnham. The second half would start with BC's defense getting on the scoreboard with a safety from a young version of future superstar Matthew Beck. BC then goes into game management mode for the next 2 drives with lots of short passes and runs to eat up the clock. On their next possession, Rourke, clearly getting bored at this point, decides to drive the field, taking one across the line himself. Despite all common sense and being up 32 points against the worst offense in recent memory, Rick Campbell decides to leave his franchise quarterback in the game to start the 4th quarter. We get to see a bunch more nice completions, including this example of lack of arm strength into tight windows. With only a few minutes remaining, Rick Campbell finally pulls Rourke from the game to put Team Canada's quarterback, Michael O'Connor, in for some garbage time. Rourke would finish his masterpiece with a perfect 158.3 quarterback efficiency, 5 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 0 interceptions, 477 passing yards, and a single game completion percentage record of 91.9%. Especially notable when you factor in that 2 of the incompletions were drop passes. Not content with perfection, the following week he would go on to pass for 488 yards against a Bo Levi Mitchell-led Calgary Stampeders. This game's another masterclass, including one of the greatest throws I have ever seen. I don't know how many times I've rewatched this clip, and I still don't understand how he makes this pass. BC would win the game after driving from their own 6-yard line with 83 seconds remaining, resulting in a Sean White field goal with 2 seconds left on the clock. Heading into a hostile environment at Mosaic Stadium, Rourke would continue to be unfazed. Up against a good Saskatchewan defense, Rourke would once again set a blistering pace, completing 22 passes for 375 yards and 2 touchdowns in only 3 quarters of play. However, early in the 4th quarter, Saskatchewan would send a stunt at the line, Butler would miss his block, and the result was a sack that would end Rourke's record-setting year. He would require surgery on his foot after this and wouldn't return until the final game of the season. Prior to his injury, Rourke was leading the league in passing attempts, completions, completion attempts, passing yards, yards per attempt, passing touchdowns, and of course, quarterback efficiency. He was on pace to set nearly every franchise record, as well as a significant number of league records. He would, however, finish the season with a 122.6 quarterback efficiency, 3,349 yards in just 10 games, and the all-time single-season completion percentage record of 78.7%. Rourke would spend the next year and a half playing in a different football league before finally returning home to the BC Lions midway through the 2024 season. He would initially be placed behind starting quarterback Vernon Adams Jr., but after an injury to Adams and more strong play from Rourke, he would once again be named the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season. Prior to the 2025 season, Adams would sign with Calgary, and Rourke would once again become the franchise quarterback. He would continue right where he left off, finishing the season with a league-high rating of 112.2, 5,290 passing yards, 564 rushing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, and 10 rushing touchdowns. The season would then be capped off by being named the league's most outstanding player. He would then be rewarded with an extension that keeps him in BC through the 2028 season on a contract worth roughly $2.1 million. It's easy to look back on a Hall of Fame career and see the greatness that was. It requires a little more attention to recognize it unfold before your eyes. As you watch the upcoming season, and hopefully many seasons after that, try to take the time to recognize the greatness that's happened in real time. Anyways, I'll be closing up soon. Get home safe. I'll see you again next time. Oh, it's so good. Prior to his injury, Rourke was leading the league in passing touchdowns, and then get home for a sack on the resulting 2-second buck. Rourke would follow this up with 2 more strong performances against the Winnipeg Putney, record of 91.9%.